Okay, here we go. So this is now the next episode where we're going to look at a few more questions that I have created. Um, we're starting with, let's get this all set up. So we're starting with a question that is as follows. So here is the question, and it says outline two explanations of obedience, and it is a 6-mark question. Now, when watching these videos, obviously it's really important, as I've said previously, just to kind of listen through to the actual what I'm saying here, because that's where the exam tips will come in. I won't write them all. So that is really important. So in terms of the breakdown of the question, again, you may want to pause the video, have a go yourself, and then I will break down the question. Okay, so outline. That would be useful if that wasn't that. Looking like that. Here we go. Sorry about that. So yeah, outline is the command word here. So we're just, our knowledge there should be AO1. Obviously you've got your 6 marks. And the overall topic that we're linking to there, so the overall picture there is the obedience. And then we have our 2 explanations of obedience. Now, there are technically, I would count 4 explanations. And obviously, we need to focus just on 2. So you might want to have a think to yourself, if you haven't done already, what are those explanations of obedience? So we have the agentic state, and I'm going to pick legitimacy of the authority. Explanation. Now, we also have situational variables and you have the dispositional explanation, but I've gone for these. So, in terms of this, as I said, you could have the word describe, you could have outline 1 explanation, they could maybe say a specific explanation, but I've just made up this one, just come onto this Word document and done so. So in terms of outlining the 2 explanations, again, I would pause the video now, give it a go, answer it in full, see what you can remember, and then I will go through how I would personally do this. So in terms of the bullet points, I'm just going to go through like key phrases, key words that I would personally include for my question. So first off, when I'm talking about the agentic state, I would talk about a shift. So the other state you may want to mention here is the autonomous state. And when you're in this agentic state, if you remember that an agent is someone that acts on behalf of someone. So you may want to put in the phrase that they lose personal responsibility, they believe they are acting on behalf of an authority figure. Again, like I said, you could put in there in terms of the agentic state, but you could say there may be an agentic shift when you shift from the autonomous state, where you are responsible for your actions and you take responsibility onto this. Okay, I personally would do that straight to the point, and you can use Milgram technically as support here, but I would make reference, just for the explanation, quick example, don't say research or support, just literally say this was shown in Milgram, where he it showed that participants were asking who was responsible. You want to link to obedience consistently through this question. So you could say they believe they're acting on behalf of the authority figure and are more likely to obey. So always link back to obedience. Okay, so more likely to obey. Okay, so that is the first explanation, and as I said, with making reference to Milgram. Then I would move on to the second explanation, which I chose was the legitimacy of authority, or the legitimacy of the authority figure. So I'm just going to put that to simplify it for a second. So this one is when you want to say people obey, so again straight into linking to obedience. They obey people maybe with power and status. They accept obedient, kind of accept credentials, so that could be something like a qualification or a certificate or a policeman's badge or something. And then I would personally say this is ingrained in us from a young age. In terms of the link to Milgram, there's a couple things you could do. You could say, for example, the legitimacy of the uniform that he was wearing. So you could go, that's what I would personally do. You could go down the legitimacy of the location, etc. There's multiple things that you could include there, but as I said, if I was answering this question for 6 marks, that's what I would do. So moving on to the next question, so we switch over now to something from psychopathology. Okay, hopefully that works. There we are. So there is your next question. So again, my question, I made this up. Obviously, outline one behavioural characteristic of depression. You could have one cognitive characteristic of depression, one emotional characteristic of depression, or you could have them about phobias or about OCD. I've just picked this one, one behavioural characteristic of depression. Now, whenever you see a question like this, the first thing you probably want to do here, obviously again, it's just AO1. We're only dealing with 2 marks. We know we're linking to depression, so important there. But this behavioural characteristic, one of the biggest mistakes, people might see the word behavioural for this type of question and think, oh, is that classical and operant conditioning? Do I link to that? No, right? So a behavioural characteristic is the way we act, okay? Emotional, the way we feel. Cognitive, the way we think. So all you have to do, if you remember those 3 words, is then think, well, describe or outline one way that you act if you have depression. And if you break it down like that, then that kind of implies that you would be able to think, well, if someone had depression, what would they be doing? How would they be acting? Okay, so if you want to pause the video and have a go at just writing that down and explaining yourself, and then I will go through what I would do. Okay, so if I go to this here, let me just get the pen back on. So personally, for this question, I would go down the route of I'd probably either go down the lack of energy route and how that might impact in terms of sleep. And then you could talk about insomnia, so like not sleeping or sleeping too much. You could go down the route of maybe a lack of appetite, or maybe eating too much or not enough. But what's important to know with this is you have to do one. So don't waste time and do more than one. As I said, maybe not lack of energy, maybe just difficulty sleeping could be a potential option. And finally, our final question, we are dealing with this one, which is again another one I just made up. So this one says, explain one difference. So again, straight away, explain but also the one. Explain one difference, okay, between a child who has a secure attachment and one that has an insecure resistant attachment type. So straight away, it's a different question, so you might want to think what keyword you use when there's a difference. Secondly, you want to paint a picture of what a securely attached kid acts like and what an insecure resistant child would act like. And you also want to think about the variables that you could mention through this. So remember, it's 4 marks. Okay, so pause the video and let's see if you can remember what those variables are and how the kid may act, or the child. Okay, so this type of question, as I said, the key word up there with the difference is whereas. So you could use others, I would just encourage to use whereas. As we look into this, again, I'm doing it in simplified format, but I might talk about separation anxiety for my first part. Okay, and I would say a securely attached child on separation anxiety would be upset. Okay, whereas. Okay, so that is crucial. If you don't do that, you're not going to get the marks. Whereas insecure resistant would be intensely distressed. That to me, at first, you may think, yeah, is that enough? Now, for this type of question, depending on the wording, and you could do a variety of variables. This question, to be honest, could well be, thinking about it, a 2-mark question. If it had said 2 differences or explain differences, so let's just say for the sake, it does say explain differences, I would then, as I said, go on to reunion behaviour. And again, same structure, secure will be obviously happy, and then your classic whereas insecure resistant would be clingy mixed with rejection. Okay, now as I said, if it was 1 difference, make sure you do 1. When I wrote this question, I actually thought I'd put just explain differences, hence why I've said separation, and I said 2 of them at first, but it is so important to realise, does it want differences, does it want 1, does it want multiple, does it want 2? So remember, in preparation, obviously, think of your what the question's saying, command word, marks, pull apart the question, so important, and never bullet point an answer, always explain yourself moving forward. Okay, so hopefully that's useful and helpful. If there's any other issues, do ask, do say, and yeah, don't forget, subscribe, smash that like button, and I will see you next time.